Welcome to All Things Marketing Podcast, the podcast that talks all things marketing for both franchise and multi-location marketing leaders. ATM is brought to you by PureDriven. We'll show you how to turn your brand into a money-making machine. Here's your host, Steve Rockwood.
Hello and welcome to ATM. My name is Steve Rockwood and I'm the marketing manager at PureDriven. I'm also kind of losing my voice, so if I crack it all, I'm sorry. Or if I just stop talking, it wasn't on purpose. My lungs just gave out. Today we are going to talk about Waze Advertising. I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Swanson, the CEO at PureDriven, as well as the head of franchise development. Chris, would you like to say hello?
Of course, I'd love to say hello. Hey, everybody. Steve, I am super pumped about the topic today, as we talked about last week. Going to be great opportunity to talk about all things Waze.
It will, and we're about 3 hours away from each other right now, so you're not going to catch my disease or whatever I have right now in my throat that I can't talk very well. So you're safe, unless it goes through microphones, in which case I'm sorry.
Well, everybody needs one good cold or one good sickness during the winter, right?
It's true.
So sometimes if I don't get sick, I just feel like my time is numbered, and I'm going to get there eventually. But as we always say, thanks for keeping it to yourself. We appreciate that.
You are welcome. And hey, if you get super sick, at least you get to stay home and kind of hang out. So it's almost a forced break every once in a while.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we're going to talk about Waze today. I've done a lot of Waze advertising, and I really like it. So, Chris, do you use Waze in your everyday life?
I love Waze. It's an app. So all of you out there that are wondering what Waze is or you're trying to learn more, it's an app that's being downloaded by many people. The younger audiences love it. It has an element of gamification to it. Gives you a lot more information than a standard Google map, which is interesting because it's actually owned by Google. And I think it was a real smart acquisition for Google to make, because Waze has a much more friendly user interface, and it seems that it's being used by younger people more heavily than maybe by an older demographic.
Yeah, and it actually looks a lot like Snapchat, the branding. It's little ghosts flying around on bicycles, and they have swords. It's almost like an RPG game turned into a map.
Yeah, and interesting enough that I find that it's actually very intuitive, and quite frankly, I think easier to navigate with.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's the big kind of pull to it is that the users actually crowdsource the information. So rather than waiting for a map to update and tell you that there's a traffic jam, it will actually tell you, because a user that uses Waze will say, hey, there's a traffic jam here, and it will update on the map for you. So you don't have to wait for one person to do something. You have 24 million people on the app, and they're all basically saying, hey, there's a traffic jam here, there's construction here, and it updates it in real time and gives you the fastest route to your location.
And Steve, I should point out too, it's not just whether there's a traffic jam. It's everything from obstruction on the side of the road, much to, I'm sure, police officer chagrin.
Yep.
It notifies if there's a police officer, safety officer. There's a lot more information it gives you as you're traveling, giving you alerts and letting you know what's happening. So it's really kind of a neat tool, because it helps you, it redirects you if you should get around some traffic that's going to create a problem for you.
Definitely. Now, we like to talk about advertising, so it's a cool app that a lot of people use, but seeing as we're talking about the advertising part here, a Waze ad is a bit different than an ad you would normally see online. The main ad is called a pin. Can you kind of describe what a pin is for us, Chris?
Yeah, so basically what it is as you're driving along, you pin basically the location with the ad, and it's going to kind of show you. It almost looks like a sign that's been stuck in the ground for your particular location. Is that a good way to describe it, Steve, in terms of the visual?
That is. It pretty much shows an outline of the building with it's almost like a flag on top of your building that says, hey, we're here.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, that flag carries your brand and your store name, and you can put the creative in there of your logo or whatever you want to put in that. Early adopters that we're seeing, of course, gas stations across the U.S. We're seeing more and more retail environments and so on. But the bottom line is that it's a great advertising tool to have your business pop up, saying, "Hey, this is here." And the way they do that is they don't just kind of let it, you don't just kind of drive past it. It kind of gets bigger at you, and it's kind of an attractive way to advertise on a map structure. I really like what they've done.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then the other part about Waze is it's not just a map. It also has a search. So much like a Google search, you can basically get a paid search ad when you pay for your advertising. And the cool thing about that is they don't charge you for the search ad. That just comes as part of it when you pay advertising fees for the pin. So that's actually pretty awesome. Now, I don't want to describe everything on this podcast because we only have about 10 minutes in total to talk about Waze, and it's not a lot of time, but I did actually write a blog post last night and put it on PureDriven.com about Waze with a lot more specific info on how it works. So make sure to check that out after the podcast just to get a little more info on how it actually works. My last question for you, Chris, is who is Waze Advertising good for?
Well, like we talked about, if you have multiple store physical location, so any restaurant, any retail like that, gas station, convenience store, very much a really important thing that you get onto Waze because it draws you, it puts you out there in front of everybody else. Steve, you mentioned, you get the search component as part of the advertising.
Yep.
I always put that little asterisk behind that because we've, as advertisers, have watched for so many years all these different tools. They eventually start changing things, shifting things. If everybody jumps onto it, what's going to happen? They're going to probably have premium listing and so on and so forth. That's just kind of a common thing that happens. But it's definitely a great opportunity for anybody that has a physical location. And especially if you're just a little ways off that main drag.
I like the pun.
It can be a real benefit to you, a few blocks off the main road or whatever, draws people in. And that's a big value for somebody who's struggling to get traffic into their store. Definitely.
And the really nice part about it is it's fairly affordable. At $2 a day is the minimum ad spend. So, and you don't have to run it for any certain amount of time. So if you have the $2 a day and you want to run it for a week to see how it goes, you can do that. You can run it for a month. You can run it for 2 months. You can run it for a year. At the most, it'll cost you $2 a day if that's what you put in there. You can always change your amount and, $2, $5, $10 a day. But that's basically how it works, is you don't pay for an individual ad or campaign. You just say, hey, this is how much I want to spend every day, and you can pause it whenever you want. So it's pretty simple to actually start doing it and seeing if the results are paying off.
Yeah, and that's great, Steve. And asterisk number 2 is, of course, prices change, things happen. But
yeah.
Right now, it's very affordable, as you know, and it puts we've tested enough to know that it puts you in a good situation with your clients or with your store.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's a great app, and as I said, if you go to PureDriven.com, if you go to the blog, you'll find more information. I didn't even touch on kind of what you see after an ad, all that information that you can see. One really cool thing about an ad is you can actually see how many people navigated directly to your store because of your ad. So when you talk about seeing the results of an advertising campaign, that's a very good way to see, hey, I made an ad, I paid this amount of money, and 50 people came to my store last month because of that ad. And you can really see the return on investment there. Now, the disclaimer on that one, of course, is you can't necessarily prove that they came into the store, but if someone navigated to your store based on your ad, you're probably pretty certain that they at least came in at some point.
Absolutely. And we love anytime there's a tool that tells us more information further into the buying ecosystem.
Definitely. So if we could track them all the way into the store and it just said, hey, they came in, that'd be amazing. But I'm sure if one day we'll get there. And I'm sure if it's not Waze that does it, it'll be a different platform that does it. So I'm sure it's on the horizon. Chris, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yep, I bet it is. Yep.
Is there anything
Well, I was going
else?
to say, I bet there is something like that on the horizon because everything is always evolving and changing. And that's the exciting world that we're in of digital social marketing and the technology marketing that we do. And it's going to be fun, Steve, as we keep seeing new products and new tools enter the marketplace.
It will. It will. I know that the marketing has a ways to go. I had to get one pun in there before we signed off. So
I love it.
Well, thank you, Chris, for joining me. Just everyone keep in mind, Waze Advertising. If you're a brick and mortar store, it's great to try it out. That's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining me today, Chris, and thank you for listening to the podcast, everybody. We'll catch you next time right here on ATM.
You just listened to All Things Marketing Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast to catch every new episode every day. Want to be a guest on the show? Sign up at puredriven.com/guest. See you tomorrow here at the ATM.